Hey guys, so today's topic is going to be longevity and my thoughts on it. So we have to differentiate between lifespan and health span, like this concept is often talked about. So lifespan is how long you live, and health span is basically how well you perform at any given age, and arguably the more important part, because what's the point of living to 100 when you're bedridden for like the last 40 years of your life? So we like, for me personally, to be honest, like I would be fine with like slightly above average life expectancy if it means I'm going to like stay really healthy and perform really well until the very end. Like, in my opinion, it's better than the opposite, where you like live a really long life and just can't function properly, or like, God forbid, are like in some kind of terrible condition for most of it. So how do we actually like improve or retain our health as we age? And some people are going to say like VO2 max is the important like metric to measure, and someone is going to be say it's all about the motor units, and somebody else is going to say it's like the health of your mitochondria. And I think there's probably no single factor, and we also have to be careful not to confuse like correlation and causation, because like there are these studies that show like people with stronger grip strength have lower all-cause mortality. And in my opinion, like then you have people say, oh, you just train your grip and you're not going to die. But like, obviously that's like just correlation, because people who are very sick obviously don't have good grip strength. But just training your grip alone isn't going to make you live significantly longer, probably. So I think like aging is like a global phenomenon. There's like probably, I assume there's not a single point, like not a single point of failure, or not a single like metric we can look at and say, okay, this is it. Like, if we just focus on that, like, we're going to like stay young forever. So we need like a holistic framework and operate on the principles we know the human body works with, and that's like use it or lose it, like train, recover, and you're going to get an adaptation. But today I want to talk about one thing that I feel isn't talked about so much, and that's stress management. And we all know that stress can age you, and I'm pretty sure there's like some solid like scientific evidence to show that. But we just know that like empirically, from just like observing people and looking around, and also our own life experiences. And if you look at people who are like really either really old, or like they're like in great shape for their age, or people who age well in general, they're usually very like optimistic and resilient psychologically. So I think that's like to say, success leaves clues, right? And one thing to understand about stress is not what happens to you. So like, people say I have a lot of stress, and they mean like I don't know, like the wife is yelling at them, and the boss is like is like writing angry emails or what have you. But that's just like what happens. But stress is your body's reaction, and there's a difference, because certain people might live lifestyles that are very stressful, like, or would be very stressful to someone else, but they are coping with it just fine. And on the other hand, you have people who are less resilient, and they objectively don't seem to have a very stressful life, but they are in a like psyched out high cortisol state most of the time. So and we know this is true when we just look at like high performance and high performers in certain fields. For example, like surgeons, special operators, and like there was this documentary about the guy who climbed the highest building in the world free solo, so without any safety, and which is obviously very dangerous. And they showed him like images of things that would be stressful to people, like extreme violence or whatever. And his brain scan, like his brain activity showed that he wasn't reacting as much as other people because he has just trained himself to not react to outside stimuli, right? And on the very extreme end of that spectrum, you would have like sociopaths who don't react emotionally to things much at all, which is why often in those high stress fields, the high performers have some like sociopathic traits. It would be like high functioning sociopaths or psychopaths. But I think this is trainable, and you don't have to become a sociopath to like benefit from this adaptation. So there are two ways to manage your stress levels, and the first one is to like imagine like if you have a glass. The glass is your stress tolerance, and you pour water into it. It's your stress. So if you don't want the glass to spill over, you either need to like pour less water or you need like a bigger glass. And that's basically the two ways, right? So we pour less water, so we just minimize the distress, like the negative stress we're exposed to. And there are ways to like become like to do that in daily life, and I think it's good to be conscious about those. Like just one example, like doom scrolling, right? We're on the apps and we're like reading about all the terrible things that are happening in the world and like getting our cortisol spikes. So if we become like conscious of that and can minimize that, that's going to be good. And the second way would be like to just get a bigger glass. And that would be just to become more resilient. And like two methods we can do that consciously and actively. Like method one would be like exposure therapy. So your like psychology works the same basically as your physical body. So it adapts to stress and you become stronger if the stress isn't too much, right? Because otherwise it becomes maladaptive and you can actually like hurt yourself, right? So same concept. Like if you feel like have never squatted in your life and you load up like 500 pounds, you're probably going to get an injury. And if you're like expose yourself to or get exposed to too much like psychological stress, you can get like PTSD or like psychological damage basically. So stress has to be adequate, and model is stress, recovery, adaptation. And you can do that in different ways, but like just like challenge yourself in little ways, give yourself time to recover, and then you're going to become more resilient. And also physical training like can help with this because it's a great way to put yourself into like a stressful situation in a controlled environment, like if you're doing like kettlebell sport, right? Or if you're doing like breath hold training, like if you're whatever, like rock climbing, all those things. And so that's like method one to become more resilient would be like the exposure therapy. And the second method would be to learn to actively control your nervous system. So nervous system is made up of two parts. You have like sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight, attack, stress. And you have the parasympathetic nervous system, which would be like rest and digest, chill out. And the way to like, we need both. We need both. We need the sympathetic nervous system for action, and we need the parasympathetic nervous system to keep it in check and also to wind down. But most people who, especially people who are stressed out, are biased towards the sympathetic nervous system. So we want to learn to tap into our parasympathetic nervous system and activate it. And there are many different ways to do this, many different methods. So like one popular one would be meditation. And meditation sounds kind of like woo-woo, and it can be like a spiritual practice, but it can also be like a purely a way of mental training. And basically what it is you just learn to control your mental state. So your attention, your focus, and your thoughts. You learn to, number one, become aware of all of that. And number two, you're going to learn to like exert some control over that. And the second very effective way to control the nervous system would be breath work. And why is that? It's because breath, as a bodily function, has a very unique quality, and that it's controlled by your autonomous nervous system. So it's unconscious. So you can't, like, if you forget to breathe, you're still gonna keep breathing, like, because otherwise you would just die. But so in that sense, it's like your digestion, right? It just happens without your active like control, without your conscious control. But you can also exert conscious control, so it works both ways, right? You can and the cool thing about it is that there's like a reverse feedback loop. So if you are stressed out, it's going to start to influence your breathing subconsciously. So you're going to start breathing more shallow and like more start hyperventilating basically. But and the reverse is true as well, right? If you chill out, your breathing is going to be slow. But if you exert consciously control over your breathing, there's this reverse feedback loop as well, and it's going to affect your mental state, like in whatever way you want, right? You can use it to hype yourself up. Like if you want to like pull a maximum deadlift, you're going to like try hyperventilating like really deep breaths for 10, 20, 30 times before a maximum deadlift. Just be careful so you don't pass out, and you like putting your body in fight or flight. And on the other hand, whenever you slow down your breathing rate and you also decrease the volume of your breathing, you're going to tap into the parasympathetic nervous system. And that way you can use your breath to, like, as a lever to leverage your mental state. And videos already getting quite long, but like my favorite way to do that is the Buteyko method. So that I'm going to make a separate video on that, but that's like really the most effective way I've found to integrate breath work and meditation, because like when you practice it, there's also going to be elements to it that basically function like meditation. So just to wrap it up, I think like controlling your stress levels is one of the most essential like longevity interventions you can do. And there are two ways to control your stress levels, like stress management. Number one is control your input, and number two is just to become so like resilient that nothing really stresses you out too much. And two ways to actively do that is like exposure therapy, and the second one would be like to actively learn methods to influence the state of your nervous system. So I hope you found that helpful. Let me know what you want to see, and see you guys next time.